So get this, India just did something huge. They've completely overhauled a criminal code that was written way back in 1860. This is a massive shift in the country's legal landscape, and in this explainer, we're going to unpack what this massive change is all about.
I mean, think about that for a second. What actually happens when a whole country decides to rewrite its rulebook for crime? Yeah, it's a massive deal. We're not just talking about tweaking a few laws here and there. This is about fundamentally redefining what the nation sees as a threat to its very existence, to its democracy, to its stability, and that's exactly what's just happened in India.
So the old rulebook, the Indian Penal Code, you'll hear it called the IPC, that's gone. And in its place, we have the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, or the BNS for short. This is the new blueprint for criminal law in the country. And today, we're going to take a tour through some of the most important parts. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to look at how the BNS protects the state, how it guards the armed forces, what it does to keep our elections fair, and how it secures the economy. Then, at the end, we'll pull back and look at the big picture. All right, let's dive right in with our first section, protecting the state. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because this chapter contains some of the biggest and probably most talked about changes in the entire code. So the first thing you have to know is that the old, controversial colonial-era law on sedition is gone. Well, kinda. See, the old law, IPC 124A, was all about punishing disaffection against the government. The new law, BNS 52, has a much wider lens. It's not just about the government of the day, it's about anything that endangers the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India as a nation. That is a huge shift in focus. Okay, so what does that actually mean? What kind of actions are we talking about here? Well, BNS Section 152 specifically goes after anyone who tries to start an armed rebellion or encourages people to secede. It also targets activities that promote separatist feelings or, in any way threaten the country's unity. And it doesn't matter how you do it, whether it's with words, signs, or even by funding these activities. And that's not all. The BNS also has really serious penalties for anyone waging war against the government, gathering weapons for that purpose, or even helping a prisoner of war get away. The key takeaway here? This whole chapter is basically a firewall against any kind of organized, violent uprising. Okay, so we've talked about protecting the nation. Now let's talk about protecting the people who protect the nation, the armed forces. These laws are all about making sure there's discipline and loyalty within the ranks of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. And a really important word you'll see here is mutiny. So what is it? Simply put, it's a rebellion from the inside. It's when soldiers or sailors openly defy and turn on their own officers. And, as you can imagine, for any country, this is pretty much one of the most serious offenses you can commit in the military. And the law, wow, it does not take this lightly. If you encourage a mutiny, and that mutiny actually breaks out, the penalty is as harsh as it gets. We're talking death or life imprisonment. That tells you everything you need to know about how critical the government thinks military discipline is. But it's not just about these huge open rebellions. The BNS also makes it a crime to try and tempt a soldier away from their duty, or to encourage any kind of insubordination. You can even get in trouble for knowingly hiding a deserter. It's basically a 360-degree shield designed to protect military order. All right, let's switch gears. We're moving from the military barracks to the ballot box. And this next part, on election crimes, is something that really affects every single one of us, because these are the rules that are supposed to protect the very heart of democracy, a fair vote. So have you ever wondered what the law actually considers rigging an election? What does it take to cross the line and commit a crime that messes with your vote? Well, the BNS lays out some very specific corrupt practices. First up, bribery. That's the obvious one, offering someone money or a gift to vote a certain way. Then you have undue influence, which is basically any attempt to interfere with a voter's free choice. Personation, that's a fancy word for pretending to be another voter to cast an extra ballot. And it doesn't stop there. The law also goes after people who spread lies about a candidate's character or campaigns that make illegal payments. Okay, for our last deep dive, we're shifting from votes to, well, banknotes. This section is all about protecting our economy by cracking down on crimes against our money. Coins, cash, even official government stamps. And the main bad guy in this chapter is counterfeiting. At its core, counterfeiting is just about making fake money or fake financial documents. And if you let it get out of control, it can seriously mess up the entire economy. So it's pretty straightforward, right? It's illegal to fake Indian coins, currency notes, or government stamps. But the law is smarter than that. It goes a step further. It's also a crime to make or sell the equipment you'd need to make the fakes. Heck, even just having the tools and materials can land you in hot water. The whole idea is to catch counterfeiters at every single point in their operation, from start to finish.
All right, so we've taken a quick tour through 4 really important parts of this new law. Let's zoom out. What's the big picture here? What does India's new rulebook really tell us?
A few things really jump out. First, it's clear the BNS is trying to be a modern code for modern problems. It's built for today's security challenges. We also see much broader definitions for crimes against the nation's integrity, and there's absolutely a strong focus on protecting democracy with fair elections and on creating solid safeguards for the country's military and its economy.
Look, this is not just a fresh coat of paint. Tossing out a law from 1860 is a massive historic shift. It's about trying to line up the country's legal system with where India is today and where it wants to go tomorrow.
And all of this leaves us with one final and really important question to think about. As this new rulebook actually starts getting used, as it's interpreted by judges and lawyers, the real test is going to be this. How will it shape that very delicate and often tricky balance between keeping the nation secure and protecting the personal freedoms of more than 1 billion people?